Welcome to another edition of the Advisor's Guide to Estate Planning, where we're continuing our series of interviewing advisors that have successfully implemented estate planning services for their clients, and they share their best practices with you. So today's conversation is going to be incredibly valuable to many of you. We've heard from a lot of advisors on this podcast about how they rely heavily on their internal teams to run and implement the estate planning experience for their clients. So today we're going to speak to Bill Page of Modern Wealth Management, who is the back office estate planning coordinator for his firm. The advisors within his firm tee up the estate planning opportunities. He steps in to facilitate them to completion. So if having an estate planning para-planner slash coordinator on your team is of interest to you, you're going to love this conversation. Bill's been in this role with his firm for nearly 20 years, hails from Lenexa, Kansas. He's a Mizzou grad living in Jayhawk country, and he's a part-time farmer as well. And so welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about this family farm that is.
We're a small family farm in Northwest Missouri that I'm not necessarily a farmer, but I do spend a lot of time up there. We use just row crops, and it's been the backbone of our family for generations. So I like to spend a lot of time up there.
So that makes maybe that if it's a generational family farm, then I would probably guess you have some sort of estate planning experience in your personal life that something like that gets handed down generationally. Am I right? Is
You
that
know,
that kind of an interesting?
yeah, exactly. Um, uh, I learned of my parents putting together an old school AB trust in the early 2000s. Didn't really know what it was about. I was only, oh gosh, 19, 20
Mhm.
at the time. Uh, but my dad passed away early in 2010. And when I learned about the trust, I learned quickly that he was very smart in how he and my mom put it together and how it was funded correctly
Mhm.
and how it served its purpose and with no issue to my mom after he passed away. So that was something that I knew that although I had been in the financial services industry for about 5 years at the time, getting into the estate planning side of things really interested me and really catapulted me into wanting to help our clients ensure that they avoided probate at all
Mhm.
costs, and I kind of felt a duty to help them along with that. So that's how we kind of established our estate planning pillar here at Modern Wealth. Um, Also, at the time we were just referring clients here and there to random attorneys here in Kansas City. But we kind of honed in that service and streamlined that process and has been quite successful ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's great to hear a good family story of a
Yeah,
successful, because there's
yeah.
no shortage, and I have them in my family where the family member who didn't get a good estate plan in place or it wasn't properly funded, and watch the families go through that. But that's a beautiful thing that it's the farm has continued, it sounds like, to the next
Yes.
generation, that you guys must as siblings still run it. Is that how that has worked out?
We have family that runs it. My sister
Okay.
and I don't
Okay.
really do too much other than keep things up and make sure that we protect the integrity of what was built for us.
That's really neat. That's awesome. That's how it's supposed to work. And so,
Yeah.
so you have that model to share with clients of the positive model of when these
Yeah,
are done
yeah,
right,
the good model.
here's,
Yeah.
yeah, how it's going to work versus how it can go off the rails that many of us have seen as well. And so, yeah, so the modern wealth kind of platform and how you work with inside of your firm and location specifically. Share with us kind of the background. How did this come to be that estate planning became really important to solve for that, or maybe the gaps in the referral to attorneys only? How did it come to be, and how did it get designed and thought of that said somebody's on the back office kind of doing the day to day, owning it?
Sure.
Share with us that story.
Sure. Yeah. So when we kind of started building this out, we needed to have a way for the CFP to, and the advisor and the CFP to be able to have a look and see how things were established, how things were built, and how things were to distribute after the client potentially had passed. We implemented a CPA tax practice here at Modern Wealth, and then it was just second nature to bring in estate planning and bring that into our office as well to become a one-stop shop. That way, everybody on the backside is talking in the best interest of the client. We initially started with a couple of attorneys. They were wealth counsel attorneys that we vetted out and had a fantastic relationship. They started as time evolved, pricing increased, and we were trying to keep it while economical for the client, but also become a little bit of a revenue stream for the office as well. Because the big focus when the estate planning process came into play was not only putting the plan in place, but funding that plan. If you don't have a funded plan, you just got a pretty red book up on the bookshelf
Yep.
that does absolutely nothing for you but heartache and probate.
Yep.
And so that's where we really focused on doing the funding. In about 2000, it was about 2019, 2020, Dean Barber, the president here at Modern Wealth, was at an ETSLOC conference and ran into one of his colleagues that introduced us to Encore and talked about, this online service. I thought, well, I thought, well, that's something that we could potentially, focus on. And so we looked into it and really have ran with it ever since. We've still retained our attorney relationship for those Harrier plans that with the blended families and the bad plans, if you will.
Yep.
Uh,
Complicated
but
ones.
yeah, but Encore has been very economical. We turned it into really an economical piece for the client. We still focus on the funding and ensuring that assets get funded correctly, beneficiaries get on all accounts one way or another, and has really taken off for us. The attorney, of course, has reduced his time here a little bit, but we still favored that relationship, and it's been a win-win all around.
Well, let's speak to that because I know that is something that new advisors with Encore think about. You said the attorney relationship that you obviously they understood you partnered with Encore as a solution, but you still have business for them or not a solution for all the clients. How did that play out? Pretty fairly. They recognized what they needed to get price increase wise, and how did that play out?
So, it's, obviously we talk about prices one-on-one with each and every client. But we just found that, for the simple client that wants a simple plan for probate avoidance and to protect the assets for their kids and other potential beneficiaries, this was a more slimline, what I want to say,
Streamlined, maybe.
streamlined
There you go.
process. The Encore website is so easy to use. And not only that, you're not recommending things to the client, you're simply asking the client questions. There's helpful hints on each page and each part of the intake form, if you will, on the Encore website, and it's really so straightforward. I had a couple or actually one that I spoke with this morning that I delivered his binder to, and he goes, "This seems too simple." I said, "Well, you had a really simple plan. You couldn't ask for much more." And the reason he said that is because he's coming out of a probate process from his deceased father, who had vehicles and stock shares that were left to a will
Mm.
that he's now fighting a sibling on.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to show him how easy and streamlined this is with a state-specific document that really covers all bases.
Is that interesting? Because that may be a story too. That did the public nature of probate not help his cause with that
Uh,
contestment?
being being public, but more so the cost of having to have a probate attorney
Yep.
and the
Yep.
time that was put into probate, they're currently at 8 months,
Wow.
and they just finished up with the publication process. So they're just, it's one of those things. Who wants to deal with that when you've lost a loved one?
Yeah.
Just,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That extra headache. I've seen family members go through it, and the grieving process is just totally different
it's
when
very
you have
overwhelming.
yeah, the overwhelming of figuring all that out. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what you're avoiding, and obviously prioritizing from the beginning the funding, because that is a an opportunity where a lot of advisors are saying, "Hey, have you got the plan in place?" We're checking the box. Yep, you do. Okay, great. Well, wait. I think a unique opportunity for advisors is to learn how to fund estate plans
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
to
It can
and get
open
that
up a
complete.
treasure trove of things that you never know that you clients don't bring up to you. If they
Talk about
have
that. That would be great,
if
sir.
they have individual stock accounts or random whole life policies that they've had for years and years, the exercise of funding for the estate plan brings all that stuff to the surface.
Mm,
And you sit back and you go, well, you have all these random stock holdings that computers share. Why don't you consolidate these into your brokerage account here at the firm? Um, these whole life policies, do you really need them? What's the cash value? Is there an opportunity there to transition those into potentially something else, a long-term care, a life long-term care hybrid policy or something
mm,
of that nature?
mm.
The opportunities are endless, and it really uncovers um, other things that they might have. I had a client who we did a plan, and they had a timeshare in Branson, Missouri, and they
Right.
were not thrilled with it, and they didn't know what to do with it because the cost was just going to be astronomical by the time it went to the beneficiaries. So I did a little bit of research, and we were able to find a firm to offload that. They were able to make a little bit of money on it, but it's one of those things that you're creating a sense of relief for the client,
Yeah.
whether it be offloading a timeshare or consolidating assets into one place under your umbrella. The opportunities are endless.
Would you say you guys have been finding that for years by really prioritizing the funding? You're uncovering new assets for the firm. You're out kind of other opportunities.
There are lots of opportunities and there's lots of assets, but once you accumulate them, they can be big. But
Hmm.
a lot of times, you find just the little stuff,
Hmm.
little stuff that people forget about. They've put
Hmm.
statements in books and they have savings bonds in their Bibles, things of
Hmm.
that nature. Then
Hmm.
when kids or spouses find them,
Hmm.
there's where, you say, hey, we can handle that. We can make, updates to beneficiaries or ownership and make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
Yeah, that's a great way to remind people to read their Bible, that you maybe you
Yeah,
never know what you find, right?
yeah, yeah.
I've heard of parents doing that, giving their kid that needs cash a Bible and says, "Hey, maybe there's an answer here." And they never
That's
find the
right.
cash that was
Yeah.
tucked inside because they never opened it. And so, well, and this is great because so tell us more about this. So the way you guys structured it from the beginning, and this giving you the time, because this is one of your primary focuses, to
Mhm.
actually do that versus busy advisors that are doing a lot of different things. Tell us about how you've structured the process within your firm, that
Sure.
where the advisors in the regular day-to-day or the planning team, and then they find the estate planning need, how they do that pass off to you, how you guys work that within the
Sure.
firm.
So with prospects, we ask for any kind of estate planning documents up front. We so that we can review them and see if there's any holes that we can shoot in or if we can just see if everything's okay for the time being. For our other clients, we review 1, 2, or 3 times a year with our current clients. And so we're able to talk about what's going on currently. Are there changes that need to be made with your current estate planning documents? Or why haven't we checked this box yet? Why haven't we moved forward? And so once we've determined that need, the advisor or the planning team will just put time on my calendar and or bring me into those review meetings, and we start the process from there. And I really just take it off the advisor's plate for the time being because they've got better things to do.
Okay.
And I take over with the meeting. A majority of the meetings are virtual at this point in
Okay.
time, just
Yep.
because that's the nature of our
Yep.
business now.
Yeah.
And we just have a good conversation about, what do you want? When you plan, always plan from the perspective of how do you want things to look tomorrow if you were taken out by the bus?
Mhm.
And that really sparks a lot of thought into clients that, oh my gosh. And then not only that, but if you're establishing a revocable living trust, you plan for tomorrow, not for 20 years out, because the trust can always be updated or amended.
Yep.
So that's always a little bit of relief. But yeah, take it off the advisor's plate and run with it. And once we have the documents in place, they're signed, they're notarized and witnessed, we put together a binder with copies, an envelope with originals, and we put everything on a flash drive so that they have an electronic version.
Okay.
And once we deliver that to the client, then we talk about what assets are there that we need to update beneficiaries on? What do you have outside of our asset management that I see in your plan, but we don't have it actually custodied here? And then we also talk about cars, bank accounts, things of that nature, making sure that we had the right processes down to do that funding portion. And then once we have everything, we scan it into our system, and then it's there for reference to go moving forward. And then every 2 to 3 years warrants an actual full-blown review of just the estate plan. Of course, the advisors talk to the clients, at every investment review, have their priorities changed? Have people passed away? Do they need to do something different? But we do take a deep dive every 2 to 3 years on those estate plans that we've done to ensure that they're still up to date. Secure Act of 2020 turned a lot of things upside down, a lot of planning upside down. And
Mhm.
so we were busy the first couple of years doing amendments, making sure everything
Mhm.
was up to par. But we average probably 5 to 6 plans a month here,
Mhm.
uh, either that through Encore or through our
Mhm.
estate planning attorney. So we're always on our toes and always busy
Yeah.
with that.
How does that meeting schedule look like when the advisor hands it off to you? You're doing the meeting, maybe with or without them there on
Mhm.
that first conversation, and then are you taking it from there? And how many times are you meeting with the client? There's the initial intake. My guess is you're sending them some resources to prepare for that. Maybe talk through the details of that beginning to the end on the workflow and how that's being handled.
Sure. So usually the first meeting, we're just talking nuts and bolts,
Okay.
the 30,000 foot view
Okay.
of, what do you want it to look like? What's the difference of a will versus a trust? What's your intent? If they know it then and there, I keep them on and I pull up Encore and I start inputting all of the information that's required. And then I always, once I have all of that information, maybe on the first or second meeting, I always send the summary for them to confirm. Uh, Once bitten, twice shy.
Hmm.
I put a plan into place. I
Yep.
actually had the clients in the office with me. They were all gung ho. And they said, yeah, let's go. So I did it without sending the summary. And then they went and had drinks with friends that night. And they got on the subject and they decided that they didn't need a trust. Well, I had already paid and put the plan in
Yeah. Hey.
motion.
Hey now.
So that
Yeah.
showed me that was
Hmm.
that was one of those things
Hmm.
you learn the hard way.
Sure.
But always send the confirmation out to the client and let them confirm.
Yep.
There, you may have fat fingered something, you may have
Hmm.
not put the correct spacing somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, but I always send the confirmation and
Yep.
wait for the confirmation.
Yep.
Once I have that, then I always wait until I get the documents back.
Hmm.
Um, because there may be questions in between and I don't want
Yep.
to schedule if they're not ready, right?
Yep.
And then I was scheduling them in, have them sign, and I'm a notary as well, so
Oh, okay.
get
Not
them
even.
notarized and everything. And while I have them in, we review what assets that I need to work on
Great.
for the funding portion.
Okay. Perfect.
And then I always give about 3 to 4, usually 2 to 3, 4 weeks sometimes for time to get all that processing done, the scanning, the putting together the
Hmm.
binder, making copies and all of the getting the forms put together.
Yeah. Cool. So, and I'm assuming for all this work and kind of the cost of the firm of you to make all this happen, you guys are charging a fee on top of our fee for the service overall.
Yes.
Mm.
So we start with a trust-based plan at 2,300.
Okay.
Um, and with a deed, we don't upcharge on the deeds, we just upcharge on the base plans.
Hmm.
So I think we do a will with a deed for a couple is 1,000,
Hmm.
and we'll do powers packages for about 350,
Okay.
either single or double. But we don't upcharge on that, and we haven't really dove into doing restatements. We just haven't come across doing those.
Okay.
But the one we've done so far, we charge 1,500 off for a restatement.
Okay. Of the client's existing documents that they
Yeah,
brought in.
if we're just updating documents
Hmm.
and the funding is already done,
Yeah.
then yeah,
Okay. That makes sense that,
yeah,
yeah, the restatement where you don't have to refund it. It's a
yes,
different use of that term, but
yeah,
but then that saves the time and effort that they're not part of the cost structure.
right.
That's great. That's the first time I've heard that. So that's interesting that, yeah, if we're doing that more simplified update, that's
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely.
And so most clients, how does that compare to a local attorney or maybe that other attorney? Is it similar? Is it
A little bit similar. So our local attorney um, uh, charges a little over 3,500
okay?
to
Yep.
do the
Okay.
plan to include the funding, but then reverts some of that
Yeah.
feedback to us as our funding fee. So
Okay.
the client is only writing or swiping the card once,
Yep.
and then we get a little bit back on the back end from the attorney.
Yep. So how would you articulate or sum this up? Because obviously you, from your role, you're them making the investment in you to prioritize this, and I'm assuming it's safe to assume I think that you guys are doing more plans because you're in this role versus if it was left up to the advisor themselves, the relationship manager kind of advisors the way you've structured it. Fair to say you're doing more plans. And the
Yes,
cost structure, though, to have you in place that with what you're charging, it's a win for the firm, it's a win for you and your job, it's a win for the client. They pay
sure.
less. Talk through, maybe give us your perspective on that. And I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Oh no, you've hit it right on the button. It's economical for the client and it's economical all the way around. Uh, uh, Clients who really do a lot of due diligence and a lot of research into doing plans, a single or a couple, um, have noticed that it's expensive to go through an attorney,
Hmm.
and rightfully so, right? But if you have the capability to do state-specific documents by a group of attorneys who write those,
Hmm.
and at Encore, they all have that human touch, right? That are all reviewed by, even though you put all the information into a template, it's all reviewed.
Hmm.
So that gives the client a little ease as well. And to
Yep.
know that we're doing the work, it's well worth it.
Yeah. And you've done a lot of that. You've worked with our estate planning team on where you've had to go outside, color outside the lines sometimes. Maybe
Yeah,
share your experience there on where, I mean, you're familiar with other platforms that are available for advisors to use,
sure.
maybe with that ability to have somebody on the back end to reach out and say, want to make sure, client wants to make sure this is accomplished this way.
Right.
As I understand it, you've worked with our team, quite a bit in that realm. Share with your
Yeah.
experience or the occasions, maybe in stories that matters.
Um, I've just, there's always caveats. There's always, well, what if I want to do this, or what if I want to do that? The support team and everybody at Encore has been so very accommodating. Um, we have going to be working with a client who's got beneficiaries who are overseas, and
Mm,
so that was an easy email. Hey, can we accommodate this for the client who has no family here, but they're all in the Philippines? Of course, that's something we can do. It's just making sure we have updated beneficiary addresses and contact information. Um, there's caveats all the way around, and the team is very easy to work with in making sure that we can do that for the client. And if we can't do it for the client, then of course, that's an easy, hey, we're not able to do this, but how about maybe an alternative direction?
mhm.
And the support team at Encore has been what very cool in doing so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the goal. That's what matters. I mean, there is that human component that for the uniqueness of many different situations that we want
Right.
to make it easy for you to be able to facilitate. So that's the
Absolutely.
hopefully the win for you. So this has been awesome. Thank you for sharing kind of that structure,
Yeah.
because I see more and more firms doing this. There's a little bit to the implementation of that and of how to structure that, obviously how to set up your workflows, how to do that. But the reality is I'm confident, I think you are too, more plans within your client base and probably prospects as well are getting done because the advisor in the working with the client doesn't have to be everything. They have
Right.
you to step into that.
Absolutely. It's a lot about maintaining the relationship and having that personal touch.
Hmm.
And there are other companies out there that do estate planning, but they rely more on the AI and
Hmm.
sending the client to the website to do it.
Hmm.
I like this because it has such a personal touch to it, maintaining and retaining that relationship. And that's of utmost importance to us. And that's what I value with Encore.
Yeah. Well, this is great. You've been an awesome partner. We're grateful for you coming in and here sharing how you guys have structured this and to other firms like
Sure.
yours that may find this really beneficial to hear how to build that structure. And so thank you for taking your time. I have one last important question for you.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're a betting man, but if you were forced to put money on it, how much would you bet that the Kansas City Chiefs repeat?
It's looking good. It seems like when Patrick Mahomes has a kid, he has a Super Bowl. So they're on number three. So I, it's
So
looking good so far.
$1, $500, you have to put money down on that bet. What, how much? How much you
That's
putting
an
the
easy
stake in?
that's an easy 50 right there.
All right, 50. All right, that's good. That's a high level of decent level of confidence. Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, well, great. It's been awesome this conversation today. Appreciate you taking your time. And hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Advisor's Guide to Estate Planning. Really appreciate your support. Remember to subscribe and leave a review. Share with colleagues or friends. For questions and feedback, email us at info@encoreestateplans.com. Can't wait to hear from you all, and we'll see you on the next episode.